Hey guys, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ifeoluwa. In this video, I'll show you how to make this beautiful short BUBU dress. So that is the cutting and the stitching of this dress with asymmetric neckline and inner pockets. So if this is something you're interested in learning, stick around and watch this video to the end. It is very simple and very straightforward, and it doesn't take a lot of time to make. So if you're also seeing this video and you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do well to subscribe, give my video a thumbs up, and also feel free to leave your questions and your comments in the comment section. Thank you very much, guys. Now let's get started. So these are the measurements I'll be using for this tutorial: the bust measurements, the waist, and then the hip. For this particular one, I'll be using just the hip. I won't be using the bust and the waist because I want it to be very free. So if you want it to have shape, that is when you can use the bust and the waist. Then the length of the dress, the across back measurements, the sleeve length, the waist line, and the hip line. So these two, I'm also not really going to use them. So it is just if you want the dress to have a little shape, that is when you can use the bust and the waist. But for this particular one, I'll just be using my hip measurements. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to create a margin here. So from this margin here, I'll be taking the measurements, which is the those are the horizontal measurements, the length, the chest line, and the rest. So from this margin, I'll be taking, so you can just leave a little space of about 0.5 inches because of the allowance that we'll be adding to the neckline and the shoulder slants when you are done cutting. So from this margin now that I've created, I'm going to measure out my chest line. So for the chest line, originally I have 8.5 inches, but I want this to be very free, so I'm going to be leaving it at 11 inches. So you can go below or above 11 inches. It just depends on the size that you are working with and how free you want the dress to be. Now after this, I'm going to measure out the waistline, which is my half length. It is not necessary for this particular dress I'm about to cut, but for those who want to have a little shaping at the waist and the hip area, that is why I'm just doing this, just to show you. Then I'm going to measure out the length of the dress. Then after measuring out the length, I'll come to that waistline and measure out the hip line, that is the waist to the largest part of the hip, that is your hip depth. Then I'm going to connect to the other side. Now I'm going to measure out my across back measurement. So I have 16 inches divided by 2, which is 8 inches. So I'm going to mark it there. Then from that 8 inches, I'm going to measure out the sleeve length. So from the 8 inches, which is the across back, I'll measure out my sleeve length, which is 12 inches. So I have 12 inches as the sleeve. Then I'm just going to add extra 1 inch for the allowance there. So I have 13 inches altogether. So the same thing I have there is what I'll be measuring out on the chest line. So that part that we came down by 11 inches, whatever I have here, which is 21, I'm going to measure it there, and then I'll connect a straight line. Now I'm going to measure out the body of the BUBU, which is how wide I want it to be, and then I'll be using my hip measurement for this. So that is my hip measurement divided by 4. Then I'll be adding some extra allowances to make it bigger. So I have hip measurement, which is 44 divided by 4, that is 11. Then I'll be adding 5 inches, and it's also that 5 inches also carries the 1 inch for the allowance, so which means I'm just adding 4 inches for the ease, then an extra 1 inch for the allowance. So I'm going to do that straight down. I'm going to be measuring that straight down. But if you want your BUBU to have shape, you can just measure out the bust divided by 4, you add the allowance that you want, the waist divided by 4, you add the allowance, the hip divided by 4, and then you add the allowance. Then on the M line, you also put your hip line there. But for me, that I just want it to just be straight, I'm just going to measure out my hip divided by 4 plus 5 inches as the allowance, the ease and the sewing allowance, and I'm going to measure it straight down. So now that I've already connected that together, I'm going to make a curve there. So I'm going to add allowance here, which is 0.5 inches. So for the sewing of that part, I'm going to be adding 0.5 inches. So I'm just going to create a straight line there. Then from that part, I'll curve it into this side seam that we have. So you just curve it in like that. So that is what we have for that part. If you leave it sharp like that, it won't really make sense. So you just curve it in from that part, and this is what you have for your side seam. Then I'm also going to add my allowance at the bottom, that is the length of the dress. So I'm going to add about 3 inches for the allowance there, allowance for the M line, what I'll be folding in. So I added 3 inches there. Now for my neckline, I'll be using 4 inches as the neck width. So I have 4 inches there, and then for the neck depth, I'm going to be using 1 inch for the neck depth. So that 1 inch is still going to serve for both the front and the back. So later, by the time when we are done cutting this one out, we are going to settle the front neckline. But for this, I'm just going to cut them together like this, both front and back. Now I'm going to draw out my shoulder slant. I'm just going to come down by 1 inch there, then draw out my shoulder slants. So guys, this is what I have before I proceed to cut out. Then for this part, I'm going to be adding the allowance there, that is 0.5 inches. When you are cutting out, you go ahead to add your allowance there, 0.5 inches on the neckline and on the shoulder slant. Then at the side here, you already have the allowance, that is 1 inch, and then this 0.5 that we added there. Then also on the sleeve area, you already added the 1 inch allowance. Then on the M line, I already have my 3 inches allowance. So after you are satisfied with whatever you have, you can then go ahead to cut out. So this is me cutting out what I have. So this is for the neckline where I said you should add the 0.5 inches allowance. So you can see that I'm not cutting directly on the line that I made. Then this is also the shoulder slant. I'm adding the 0.5 inches allowance for that part too. So this is what I have for both front and the back pattern after cutting. So I'm going to just open this up and then take out one of them. So you can just take out the one that doesn't have any markings on it, and then you use the one that has markings to cut out the neckline of the front pattern. So that is the asymmetric neckline. So from that line there, I'm going to measure out how deep I want the neckline to be. So I want my neckline to be around 7.5 8 inches. So I'm just going to mark out 7.5 inches for this. And I'm going to draw out a straight line. Now after drawing out this straight line, I'm going to proceed to draw out a V line that is going to connect to the other side of the neckline. Now you can either work with this V neckline, or you can make yours like a little bit circle, a little bit curve, a little bit curvy like this. So you can see what I'm doing here. So it depends on how you want the neckline to be, but I'm going to be leaving mine as this V. I'm going to be leaving it as a V neckline. Now I'm going to proceed to cut out the neckline. So this is it for the asymmetric neckline. So this is the front of the dress. Now I'm going to measure out my inner pocket. I'm going to cut out my inner pocket. So I'm just going to measure out the width. I want it to be around 8.5 inches. So I want it to be at 8.5 inches. I'm just going to connect a straight line. And then for the length of the pocket, I'm going to be using 12 inches for the length of these pockets. So I'm just going to connect that, and then I'll create a little curve there before cutting out. So I'm going to create a little curve there. Now this is pockets for one side. I'm going to cut out another one for the other side after cutting out this one. So these are the pockets. Now this is how the pockets works. You can just measure out your hands to know where you will leave open. So I'm going to be leaving 7 inches open because I want it to be very free. I'm going to be leaving 7 inches, then ½ inch at the top, so that I'll be able to join it later on. So that is 7.5 altogether, which means I'll be sewing from that 7.5 round to the other side. So the opening I'm going to be having is only the one at the upper side. So that is the 7.5 inches. So this is what I have for the front and the back of the dress. Now I just want to demarcate where the pocket will be before I take this to my machine to sew. So I'm going to turn it over like this, and then from the waistline that we measured that time, that is the 16 inches waistline, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for the pocket. So I'll be using 17 inches. So you can measure again from your shoulder line to the waistline, then you can come down by 1 inch. So that is 17 inches that I marked there. So I notch that part. Then I'm going to measure out the length of the pocket. So I have 7 inches as the length of the pocket. I'm also going to notch out that part, so which means that is the part I'll be leaving open. So I'm going to sew from the sleeve and stop there, then also sew from that part and stop at the M line and leave that other part open. So this is the crepe fabric I'll be using for the design at the front of this dress. So I made use of a crepe fabric, and you can see this is the front part of the fabric. So you make sure the front part of the fabric is the one facing you and is facing the wrong side of the main fabric that you're using, so that by the time you want to sew this to this neckline, you won't have the wrong sides on each other. So that is something about this asymmetric stuff. If the right sides are not facing each other, you will have a problem with it. So you make sure the right side of this crepe is facing the wrong side of this my Ankara fabric. So I'm just going to arrange it very well there, and you make sure you have enough at the bottom and at the side. So I'm going to trace out the neckline on this my main fabric. I'll trace it out on this my crepe fabric. So this is it after tracing out, and I'm going to bring it out and place it on top of this my fabric itself. So I'm going to place it in a way that it should be by the time you are done sewing. So this is how it is meant to be when I'm done stitching the neckline. So I'm going to place it there and then measure out the length of how I want the this design to be. So I'm going to be using 4 inches for the side here. Then I'm going to draw out a straight line. Now for the length, I'll be using 12 inches for the length, and I'm also going to draw out a straight line. And then for the other side of the shoulder, I'm also going to use the same 4 inches I used for the first side. Then I'm going to draw out a straight line to join the lengths. So this is what I have. Then I'm going to cut it out. So I'm just going to take it away from the main fabric and cut it out on a bare surface. So guys, this is it for this asymmetric neckline. Then I'm going to proceed to start sewing. Now I'll be adding stay to this because I want it to stand really well. So if you want it to have more quality or make it stand well, you can just add stay to it. So guys, this is what I have after ironing my stay to this. Then I decided to also iron out the seams. That is the 0.5 inches I'll be using to join to this to the main fabric, so that it will be easy for me to join. So I decided to iron that out too, so you can see that it looks neater this way. Now I'm going to attach this to the neckline of the main fabric. So this is how it is meant to be originally, so which means by the time you flip it to the other side, the wrong side of the main fabric will be facing the right side of that crepe fabric. So you can see it, that is the wrong side, and then this is the right side. Now I'm just going to pin that together, then I'll take it to my machine to sew. Now for the back of the dress, that is the neckline of the back dress, I'm going to be using my bias tape to turn over the neckline. So that is what I'll be using for that. I'm just going to sew it this way, and I'll turn it over like that. Now this is what I have after sewing the front neckline. So I'm just showing you that corner to be able to turn it over to the other side and make it look very neat. So this is what I'm showing you, as I've not yet notched that part. So I'm just showing you how it's going to look like when you turn it over without notching. So this is what it's going to look like. You might have a little bit of squeeze at that angle. So to eradicate that squeeze, you're just going to notch that part there. You notch it, so you make sure you don't extend to enter into the thread. So you just notch it like that, and then by the time you turn it over to the other side, it's going to be looking neater. Now if you want, you can go ahead to top stitch this part. So you can go ahead to top stitch it. So I decided to also top stitch for mine to just make it look and appear neater. So the next thing to do is to stitch down the crepe to the main fabric. So you can see I already ironed out that part, so it will be very easy for me to stitch. So you can just pin very well to make it stay in place, and then you stitch. So this is me just showing you how I did that. So this is it after stitching, and then this is the back pattern. So you can see the neckline. I already added my bias tape to the neckline. Now the next thing to do is to join the shoulders of both the front and the back together. I've already joined the shoulders here. Now the next thing to do is to tape the sleeve area, so the hemline of the sleeve. So I'm just going to fold that in. You know, I added 1.1 inches there for the allowance. So I'm just going to fold that in like that and tape. So this is what I have after taping. And then the next thing to do is to sew the sides together. So don't forget that we are going to be leaving an opening for the pocket area. So I'm just going to sew that like that, and then I'll stop before the pocket and also sew the lower part and stop stop at the hemline. Now this is what I have after joining the sides, and then you can see the opening for the pocket. So that is the opening for the pocket. And then for this corner here, so that by the time you want to open up to the other side, you have to notch this so that it's not going to, you're not going to have any squeeze. So the same thing, that thing that we did for the neckline area is what we are going to do here. So anywhere you have those kind of edges, you just notch them so that by the time you open up to the other side, they will be looking very neat at the other side. The next thing I'm going to do is to fold the hemline. So I'm going to fold this by the amount of inches I left there. So this is what I have after folding the hemline. Now the next thing to do is to fix the pocket. So that is the last thing that we're going to be doing. We'll be fixing the pocket. So these are the pockets that I have, and I already told you that the length of the pocket is, we're going to be using 7 inches plus ½ inch for that upper part. So that is 7.5 inches. So I'm going to measure out that 7.5, and then I'll sew the remaining parts. So these are my pockets after sewing, and then this is the opening. This is the opening we are going to be joining to the other opening on the main fabric. So if you don't know how to fix a pocket, I'm just going to show you how to do that here. So this is how the pocket is going to be normally when you're done fixing. So you just open up the fabric here, and then you open this other one and turn it like that. So you're going to just fix it there. That is how it is going to be. You fix it like that, and then you sew the first side. You sew it straight down like that, and then you open to the other side, and then you sew the other side. So it is very, very easy to sew. So you make sure you are fixing it at the right side. So this is me sewing it on my machine, so just so you can understand further how to fix it. So when you're done sewing those sides, the next thing to do is to now cover up the upper side. So that is the 0.5 inches that we added. So you use 0.5 inch to cover up that upper part. So that is it for sewing the pockets. You have different ways of joining pockets, so this is just one of them. So using this method, this is how the pocket looks like. You can see how neat it is, and then you can go ahead to iron that part out so that it's going to look very, very clean and neat. So guys, this is the end result of my dress. You can see the pockets, and that is the other side of the pocket, and this is the part I was talking about. That is the part that we notched. You can see the way it's looking very neat. They're not squeezed at all. So guys, this is the end of this tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. So, and let me know if you're going to be trying this out with this video, and let me get your feedback in the comment section. So I'm going to see you in my next video. Please subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up, and also share to your friends and to your families. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.